Right. So welcome everybody. Thank you so much for coming. We do appreciate you making the effort. And we're very, very thrilled by your interest in BBC Writers and our annual open call. This year's open call um, opens on November the 4th and it closes at 12 noon on December the 2nd. And that's a hard deadline. So please do make sure you get your work to us in plenty of time. I will remind you about that again a little later. But today I'm joined on screen by, first of all, our BSL interpreters. And at the moment in the driving seat is Lynn Bateman. And she will be alternating with her colleague Anne-Marie Murray, Anne-Marie Murray, I beg your pardon, to do the sign language interpretation. I'm also joined today by two lovely writers who have spent time with BBC Writers over the last few years. We have Zia Holloway. And Zia is a prolific writer based in Wales, and she was in the Wales Voices group in 2022, and then she moved on to the BBC Writers scripted group for 24 and 25. She also won the World Production Wales Writer Award. She's got lots of things developed at the moment, one called Death of Wales, that's Wales with an H. That's with the Development Partnership and the Immigrant. She's also doing a television adaptation of Canal 16 for 5X Media. And she's also got a couple of features in development as well. And during her career, she's worked both here in the UK and also in the United States, most recently working on a television adaptation with Fifth Season and Joy Coalition. Her characterful work focuses on the representation of her generation in an ever-changing world and bringing to screen distinct perspectives using the elements and genres of propulsive thrillers, grounded sci-fi, and magical realism. Thank you for joining us, Zia. And next to Zia is Mark Williams. And Mark is a Staffordshire-based writer. Mark was part of our 2023 group based in Salford. That's the group for the North and the Midlands. And during his time there, Mark completed a series outline that he used to develop a specimen script entitled The Goat. And that story, which is a cracking script about a fake televangelist based in Stoke, that script earned Mark a place on the BBC Writers scripted programme, and he did that in 24 and 25. And Mark has a very busy life. He divides his time between his writing, his family, and working as a GP. He's also written for the Birmingham Dispatch, the BMJ, and he's currently in the middle of his first novel. He's really interested on the impact of trauma on real life and how different forms of belief affect behaviour in relationships. He mixes humour, realism, and surrealism to explore these themes while striving to avoid being dishonest or mawkish. Welcome, Mark. And I'm going to be chatting to Mark and Zia just a little bit later. But before we get into that, I just want to go through a few things, and I hope to cover a lot of questions that you might have. So I will be taking some questions, which I'll ask you to put in the Q&A box, which also is at the bottom of your screen, not the chat box, the Q&A box. But I would ask you just to hold off for the moment while I go through a lot of our kind of FAQs that we get here at BBC Writers, and hopefully I will have covered your question, and then if I haven't, we will be delighted to take your questions. So first question is very, very simple, which is, what do we look for in open call? And ultimately, we're looking for writers who will populate our scripted group and our voices groups. Our scripted group is 12 writers from right across the United Kingdom. And our voices groups are 6 different groups with 12 or 13 writers in each. And they are based across one each in Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland, one in Salford for the north of England and the Midlands, one in London for everything inside the M25, and one for the southeast and southwest of England. And how we find those writers is mostly through our open call. We do have writers who come in through other routes, but the vast majority of writers we find through open call. We're looking for writers that we feel are ready for further development, specifically for television drama. Now, it's really important to say up front that any script that you send to us, we are not looking to make that script. We are not a production company, we are a commissioner. And it is production companies who make work when they are commissioned by commissioners. So what are we looking for? Why are we asking you to send us your script? Well, it's because we want to find you as a writer and to develop you as a writer. And to that end, we look at scripts, we read the scripts that come in during open call, and we identify those writers who we feel are ready for further development, as I said. So what are we looking for in there? We're looking for what we call voice. And voice sometimes is a difficult to define word. You will hear it a lot when people talk about writers. But fundamentally, a writer's voice refers to the distinctive style, tone, and personality that they show in their writing. It's what makes a piece of work feel uniquely theirs, even across different genres or formats. In many ways, it is the literary equivalent of your speaking voice. It's recognizable, consistent, and expressive. And it takes us into a world and shows us that world through your point of view in a way that only you could do. We look for a singularity of voice that stands out above all the others that we are looking at. I'd quickly like to hit some terms and conditions. We have a terms and conditions page whenever you decide to put your work into open call, and I would highly encourage you to read that. But very briefly, just to go through the headlines, your script must be a drama or a comedy drama script. We don't work with straight comedy or sitcom. That is the purview of our colleagues in comedy commissioning. And if that is your area of interest, I'd strongly encourage you to look at the comedy commissioning website and look for the work they do with their comedy collective, which is very much where they focus on new comedy writers. But if your script is a drama script or a comedy drama script, we are the people you should be talking to. The script can be for film, television, radio, stage, or young adult television or radio. It can be across any of those formats, but it must be a minimum of 30 pages long. And those 30 pages should not include a title or a cast list or anything like that. Those 30 pages are text. It is dialogue and stage direction. Any script that is shorter than that will be regarded as ineligible and it won't be read. But there is no maximum. So if you have a long feature film script, that is absolutely fine. It should be a whole script. Now that can mean one episode, but it shouldn't be an extract, and it shouldn't be a scene-by-scene breakdown or a story idea. It must be a script of dialogue. We ask you to remove your name from your script. This is so we can read your script anonymously and not bring any unconscious bias to the reading process. I would say any of you who are using some of the script writing software packages, when you convert your script to PDF, which is how we ask you to submit your script as a PDF, just check that it hasn't put your name on the front page. Some software packages do that. I would ask you to take the time to look at the PDF and, if necessary, remove that front page with your name on it. And please do read the terms and conditions and make sure that you understand what's in there and check that you're eligible to enter. And please do hit the deadline. I mentioned this before, but I'm going to say it again. December the 12th at 12 noon. We cannot accept anything after that time. If you struggle with deadlines, I'd suggest that you put some strategies in place. Maybe give yourself a false deadline of a week before. Maybe ask some friends or family to make sure that you are on top of your deadline. A really bad time to start applying for BBC writers is at about 5 to 12 on December the 2nd. And again, I say it's 12 noon. 12 noon, not 12 midnight, 12 noon. If you haven't sent us a script before, there are some hoops that you will have to go through. There is some data to fill in. We ask you some questions. So you will need to leave yourself time for that, as well as to upload your script, as well as all the usual disasters that we've all had when working with computers. So please, I beg you, please give yourself time, because it would be incredibly frustrating for you not to get your script in simply because you hadn't given yourself an extra hour. So what happens to your script? Well, as long as it's eligible, and that means it's a script, it's a comedy or a comedy drama, it's a drama or a comedy drama, it's at least 30 pages, you satisfy the residency stipulations, your script will be put through to the reading process. You must also agree that you have not used artificial intelligence in the creation of the script. The scripts are read in sifts, and I'm going to just go through those very quickly. We get a lot of scripts. Last year, we received about, I think it was 6,036 scripts. That's a lot. So we read them in sifts. And sift 1 is a 10-page read. So every script that comes in that is eligible will have its first 10 pages read. Now that sounds a little bit harsh. However, it is pretty industry standard, the 10-page read. So it's really important that that opening of your script really stands out. You're looking for a robust universe, a great protagonist, and your story that is up and running. We lose between 80 and 90% of our scripts at that stage. So again, it's really important that your opening of your script stands out. Those that make it through go to a 30-page script, a 30-page read. And this goes to another reader. This is to see that having your script going well, that you as the writer are able to sustain the world and the story. Is it going somewhere? Or is it starting to go in circles? Is the story starting to stutter? Does the protagonist have enough fuel in their tank to go through a whole episode? We lose about half of the scripts at that stage. And generally it's because although the world has been well set up, the story has started to dissolve. But those scripts that go through receive a full read. And this is where the script is assessed as a complete piece of work. Is it effective as a complete script? Is there an authorial voice working hard? Is it artistically satisfying? And about half of those scripts are assessed by the in-house team here at BBC Writers at what we call the producer read stage. From those scripts, we invite several of those writers to come and chat to us. And from that group, we select approximately 90 writers to go into either our scripted group or into one of our voices groups. So that is quite a large attrition rate to go from just over 6,000 down to about 90. But one of the wonderful things about being sent so many scripts and being trusted by writers with so many scripts is that those that are great scripts really stand out. And so your job as the writer is to try and make your script really stand out. As you can see, we rely a lot on our readers. So who are they? What experience do they have in the industry? Well, first thing to say is they are all human. We do not use AI for reading, no matter what you might read in the darker shadows of Facebook. They are all freelancers because they're professionals within the television or the theatre industry. Several are script editors and drama producers. Some work full-time in the new writing world of the theatre. They are all extremely rigorous and diligent in their work. And the reading pool is built to reflect the makeup of the UK in terms of sex, gender, heritage, socioeconomics, and geography. We build the pool to reflect the BBC's wider UK audience because ultimately we're looking for writers who can speak to the whole of that audience. In your script, the readers are looking for a great voice, an interesting setting, relevance for today's audience, diversity in terms of time, place, POV, stories from unusual places in society. A great, fascinating story, and characters and relationships that are both intriguing and feel real. So, a few top tips if you're about to send your script to this year's open call. Number one, character is king. All stories fundamentally start in the same way. Once upon a time, there was this person, and this is what happened to them. You need to do the hard yards on your characters. Who's your protagonist? Why do we want to spend time with them? Are they interesting enough to generate lots of story? Secondly, hit the ground running. Don't get bogged down in preamble. Don't be sidetracked by backstory. Get right into the main thrust of your story. A little exercise I would advise any of you who've got a script on the go at the moment, dive straight into roughly page 11 or 12 and ask yourself very honestly, if I started here, would it matter? And very often the answer is no, because your first 10 or 11 pages have been taken up with backstory. So just play that game and just see if you can start your story later. And don't try and second guess what you think we want. There's no such thing as a BBC show. You want to write the idea that you're passionate about, that keeps you up at night, that you need to write. What do you want to say, and to whom do you want to say it? Finally, resilience is incredibly important. Being a writer is sometimes a very difficult, lonely existence. Many writers enter open call several times before they manage to progress onto one of our schemes. So if you don't make it the first time or the second time, you will be one amongst many. And there are many people who sent their work in several times and eventually broke through. Because in general, your next script is better than your last one. As a general rule, if you're serious about being a writer, you need to write and keep writing. Write a script, send it off to as many places as you possibly can, and get on with the next one. And in that way, you will grow as a writer. Now I'm going to go to my lovely panelists and ask them some questions, which I hope will be useful for our lovely audience today. Mark, you went from voices into scripted. So you had to send in, scripts at least twice. How did that progress impact your development as a writer?
Okay, so quite a lot. Probably the most significant thing I've ever done. So with voices, that was the first script that I'd really done, and it did show my voice. It was, when I look back at it now, it's technically poor, but it did show my voice, and it was an interesting story. In voices, we learned about structure, story, character arcs, all from professionals high up in the game. And at the end of that, we did a series outline, and that meant we had to really understand the story and the characters and what made sense. One of the really important things was the support we got from BBC Writers team. So that was during the programme, but also afterwards, which, although we were told this, I never really, I don't know if I believed it fully, But during the program, I had a lot of good support from Emily, and particularly from someone called Usman, who helped me to understand how to show my voice, but also use the technical skills that I'd learned. And then after I'd left, and I had a bit of a mini depression, thinking, "Oh, it's all gone now; it's all over." But there's lots of emails. Emily Dermal gives you lots of emails saying what opportunities are available. So I thought was really important. So from Voices, it was about learning the basics, the support. But so then when I went to scripted, I was definitely more prepared, because I couldn't have gone straight into scripted. It's more intense. The itinerary itself is more packed. It's a smaller group, so there's no hiding. A bit less sugarcoating. But from Voices, because I learned about actual showing my voice, and you gave a really good definition of voice. And one of the things I think about is authenticity, honesty, and the purpose of that. So I think Voices showed that you need to demonstrate those things, and then you can do all the technical things and create a good script. The last thing was conscientiousness. So I already know that I can put the hard graft in, but with Voices, they kind of demonstrate that you have to be determined, take all the opportunities. And as you said before, there's always lots of rejection. You have to keep going.
Great, thank you, Mark. Zia, we're talking about scripted there. Any scripted sessions that really help develop your skills, prepare you for the industry?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say that just the value of every single masterclass or session is amazing, and I would say the opportunity to get to learn about different forms of writing. So, be it animation, be it the returning drama, the procedurals. We had a fantastic session with the Death and Return to Paradise, those series, which was an incredible experience, and just in terms of learning about these different spaces, because we obviously spend a lot of time focusing on our voice and our project and what we want to say and what we want to be as writers, but it's really important to understand that there are other projects out there and other series, that it's so important for your development as a writer in terms of craft and discipline in writing on other people's projects and getting to learn about these opportunities where there's a whole world to explore in that way. So I would say those sessions were really invaluable to me.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you. Now, Mark, people worry an awful lot about just not having time to take part in Voices or scripted. Now, as well as a writer, you're a GP, so quite busy, I think. How did you find balancing that job against your time with Voices and scripted?
That's a scary question, because my patients will think I'm being lazy. So I've got to be really careful. It's not just being a GP and a writer, because I'm a dad as well, husband, son, and I also have a dog, so no free time. The last 12 months in general practice has been quite difficult, regardless of writing. And I was speaking to a producer from Common Story last week, and they said, how do you find the time? And I gave an arrogant half answer that I regret now. I said, there's always time, just breezily. And that's kind of it's true, but also a bit of a lie, because there is always time, but it's not easy, and it requires both sacrifices from me and from those around me. So for me, I can do early mornings. I do some A&E shift as well, and there'll be a couple of hours before I do that, so I can do some writing then. Late at night when the kids have gone to bed, weekends. My wife's got a craft business, and if I need to go to London or Manchester, she'll just drop everything and I can do that. So I rely on her a lot. My GP partners allow me to take meetings during the day or to swap shifts. And even my kids, it's half term today, and they're more than happy that I do this. So there's always time as long as you're willing to sacrifice things and other people around you.
Yeah. Thank you, Mark. I think it's really important to hear that, because I do know that, people have lives, they have caring commitments, they have jobs, etc., etc. I think it's important to just think about how one can balance your writing in with everything else. Sia, what opportunities have opened up to you since you've been on Scripted?
So many. It's really amazing. So this obviously goes on for a year, so it's incredible. I mean, even the group that I've been with, and with Mark as well, it's just funny how like we all began a year ago and like where we are all now, and there's so many updates, and it's really amazing to hear how everyone's doing. And for myself, it goes in tandem, the education, with what I'm already doing in terms of going to general meetings with production companies, for example, and what I will learn in a masterclass like a week ago with BBC Scripted, I will take those lessons into my next general meeting. For example, as well with the script that I'm writing, and I had amazing script editors on that, and it was such a very positive and just really just like fulfilling experience. But that's been really helpful in terms of getting a perfect script like ready to kind of send out and share to people. And through my process with that script, I mean, it's a horror series, and it's very different from a lot of things that I'm doing as well, but there are lessons in that I will take on to the next project. And I think it's important that when you're writing, like every single project's different, and every single project you will learn and take those lessons into the next one and the next one. And it's just great with BBC Scripted that you have those masterclasses, you have those people, you have that script editor, and all of that together is just really fulfilling in terms of bringing that into my kind of next opportunities.
Just a question for both of you. So you've just mentioned your cohort, your peers. Is that peer support very important, do you find?
Yeah, well, we're all really close. We have a very active group chat as well, which is great. Sometimes I have to mute it. I'm like, what's happening? But it is really important. And again, as I say, it goes on for a year. And like what Mark was saying, that it is more intense than Voices, for example. And you need that peer support in terms of, everyone in it together when we're trying to meet that deadline, or in terms of we've all read each other's work and just getting to know each other as writers, and having real respect for those other writers. And as you said as well, Simon, about writing is quite solitary, so you have a network there, and that network, I mean, we're all up and down the country, wherever, but I think those connections are going to go on way into our careers. I think it's a good group of people.
Mark?
Yeah, and just echo that, you get lots of moral support from each other, because you said every writer gets rejected at some point, and so you need to have that moral support around you, and to stop your self-doubt. Also, I tend to boast about people I know, so Zia has done really well, and I'll boast about her. In Voices, Theo, he's just done a short film with Long Story Short, which is an opportunity people who are with the writers team get. And so I'll boast about him as well. And I don't know, I'm quite sad. I get a lot of joy doing that.
Fantastic. Just again, for both of you, any tips on how to stand out amongst those many, many submissions? Let's come to Zia first.
So what you were saying in the beginning, Simon, about writing for you is really important. Don't try and predict what other people want to read. Don't try and predict what the BBC want, because at the end of the day, like TV, it goes in trends, it goes in cycles, and you might see a lot of thrillers one time, and then in a few years it will be sci-fi or the genre pieces, but for you as a writer, you just need to think of that piece that you can't stop thinking about, and that you love, and you're excited by, and you're inspired by. And I think that feeling when you go into that script, listen to yourself and how you're feeling about that. If you're feeling, God, I don't know, of course it's a process, and you'll always come up against roadblocks and obstacles and things, but if you're going into it and dreading going into it, you know that that's not for you. So go to that project that you love and you're like, you can't wait to kind of go to, and you'll see that passion and love when you're reading it as a reading team. So yeah.
Last word to you, Mark.
And yeah, just again, you're not writing to get something made. Great, and sometimes it doesn't happen, but you're writing to show yourself. So I know some people try to be original or try to write like someone else, and some people think, oh, I'm not unique enough. And it's not cheesy to say that everyone is really unique. Everyone has strange, interesting stories. You just got to find them.
Yeah. Thank you so much. That's a really good point to end on. I'm going to ask you guys in the audience. We're already getting some questions coming into the Q&A box, but if you have any, this would be a good moment to type them in there. And I'm going to ask my colleague Kathy to join us on screen now to start going through some of the questions. I think we had some in advance, Kathy, didn't we?
We did. There was a couple that came into the inbox. A few people that couldn't make it live today, so they've sent us a few questions. So first of all, Jack asks, does the BBC check your name for previous applications? Would love to showcase how my writing evolved.
Yeah. So, well, as I said earlier, we ask you to take your name off the script. So all the scripts are read and assessed purely on the text that comes in. When we get to the very, very end, when we're starting to think about asking people to come and chat to us, it's always interesting to see if people have sent us a script previously, but we certainly don't favour anyone who has sent us something in the past. I think, did Jack ask something else as well?
Yes, he asked. He's saying he's planning on submitting his own script, but he also has a friend who he helped with with another script based on his life story. Does mentioning me as a co-worker in the other writer's application disqualify me?
Yes, it would. You're only allowed to send in one script, either on your own or as a co-writer with somebody else. So choose which one you would like to have assessed, be it the one you've written on your own or the one you have co-written. We can only accept one per year.
Yeah. There's a couple of questions from Karen. I think you've answered a few of those. She asked about how many submissions we usually get, and last year it was over 6,000. How many are long listed and then shortlisted? Do we kind of have figures roughly for that?
Well, I can't do the maths in my head, but I think, as far as I remember, after the 6,000 that have the 10-page read, we lose between 80 and 90% of them. So I guess that brings it down to about 500 or 600 that go to a 30-page read. We then lose about half of those, so you're down to roughly 300 for a full read. And then roughly half of those go for a producer read, down to about 150. And from that, we then select our 12 scripted writers, followed by our writers for voices, which is roughly 12 or 13 in each of the 6 hubs. I hope that's clear enough.
And what essential elements are looking for? You think you talked a wee bit about that. And are there any particular subjects, genres that are preferred?
No, not really. We are looking for your voice, and I would encourage writers to tell the story that they're most passionate about, that they're most comfortable with. We have no lean in or away from genre. Sometimes people worry a bit because they're interested in sci-fi or horror or anything like that. We're looking for a really great piece of dramatic work, and that can fall into many different genres.
There was one from Kirsty. Does it matter if we haven't had any writing credits in the past?
No. And as I say, your script is read anonymously, so no one's going to know that anyway.
Some in our box here, Ellie asks, a few years ago, my script was long listed and received full read. What might have been missing for my script to end up in the shortlist? So
that's a very, very good question.
That's a good question. Yeah.
First of all, incredibly well done for getting through to full read. If your script is getting through to full read, I hope you can tell from the numbers I was talking about, you've done incredibly well. And it's important to to mark that for yourself. It means that your script has cut through. In the end, what sometimes you're by that stage you're down to your last few hundred scripts, and and very much you're trying to make an assessment of script against script. It's very hard to know exactly why yours didn't quite make it through to the very end there, Ellie, without knowing the script was. But sometimes it's quite often what happens is that a script at full read can't quite finish itself. That's quite common. Or sometimes the protagonist just seems to run out of a bit of steam towards the end. But I think the thing to take away from where your script got to was that it obviously did well, and I always feel that your next script is going to be better than the last one. So if you are sending something this year, I think you should try and put everything into it that you put into the last one.
Thanks. Brigilla asks, is there a particular software that you recommend or that is most commonly used?
No, we certainly have no prejudice about what software you. In fact, we won't know, because all scripts that we receive, we ask to be converted into a PDF. Some writers just work on Word and format it as they go along, and that's perfectly acceptable. Some writers use some of the various commercial software. Some are quite expensive, and I would caution you against spending an awful lot of money on it. And there are some free software packages available. I'd find one that you feel comfortable with, but we certainly don't recommend one over the other.
We've got a question from Mark. Oh,
I was just going to say softwares. I use like either Writer's Duet or Celtex. They have like a free one, and then obviously Final Draft. Like I think it has a trial, but if you're doing like 3 scripts, then you can use Celtex or Writer's Duet.
Thanks, Sia.
Thanks, Sia. Mark, can I ask you a question, if that's okay? This anonymous attendee asks, when you write about trauma or real life problems, how do you make the reader truly feel it? To actually see and experience it rather than just understand it? That's a big question.
It's a big question. I think I'm, again, going back to honest, I just put it as it was, as it is. And so obviously I'm not putting anything that's ever happened, but I'm imagining that I'm the person I'm writing about, and how would I feel. So it's understanding your character, I believe, and being in their body, and then writing as their reactions. So I don't consciously think how's my audience going to feel. I write as if the character is real.
Thank you. And a question for both of you. Samira is asking, how long did you spend on your open call submissions, if you remember?
The first one, I saw the tweet, and I think I had perhaps 3 or 4 weeks to get it done. Did you have a script already written? No.
From scratch.
I just
wow.
It was I enjoyed it. It was purely, and I didn't think I'd get through. But I thought that's the deadline for me to write something and send it in. So I did it for that. So it was a complete surprise. And it took a while. I did it in 2021, end of 2021. I think I got told, it's mid 2022. So it was a surprise. But then for the second one, then that's different, because that was the 6 months of voices, and then a few months afterwards. So it was a big difference for the second script.
I was going to say it's good when you have that deadline there. So when I applied to Voices, I went to like the graveyard of my projects that I hadn't had an excuse to go back to. And I went through and I was like, hey, what's my favourite to kind of return to? And that I gave myself 6 weeks, but I'd already written it. And that project, I think I started writing like 2 years before, and then just kind of let it kind of sit there for ages and then return to. So it is good when you have like a deadline. So if there is something that you kind of haven't had an excuse to return to yet, maybe this is a good excuse to do that.
Thanks. There's a couple of questions coming in from different people about the difference between scripted and voices, and just a wee bit more, Simon, on the commitment. Like, can both these be done with a full 9 to 5, basically?
Yeah. So first of all, we'll talk about that first. How we operate it. So the contact time on voices happens across 6 months. And what that means is that we ask you to join us for between 1 and 2 hours every week. We do take breaks for holidays and half term and things like that, but we ask you to make that commitment to join us online on Zoom for 1 to 2 hours per week. We do have a couple of in-person sessions at the very beginning and the very end of those 6 months, so that you get to know your cohort in your local regional hub a bit better. But for the most part, you're online on Zoom, and that is how most of it is delivered. We also record them, or the vast majority of them, so that if for some reason there are 1 or 2 that you can't make, you're able to catch up. And at the same time as that on Voices, we ask you to start developing a very detailed story document. The ambition of that is that at the end of it, you're able to jump off and write a specimen script. Now, in many ways, scripted is similar in the way it's run, but we tend to do slightly more intensive work. Some of the work's at a slightly higher level. And at the end of that 6 months together, we then give you a script editor to work on your specimen script. And that script editor, I think, you'll do 3 drafts of that script with your script editor. So scripted runs at a slightly higher level. Whenever we assess the writers who have got through to the producer read of the open call, our first decision is to work out who we think is ready for scripted, and then after that we work out who might be ready for voices. You don't need to worry about which one you feel you're right for, because we're not asking you to apply for one or the other. We will simply assess the writing as it comes in, and we will make the decision about where we think you're best fitted. And in fact, with both our guests today, with Mark and Zia, they both started in Voices and then a couple of years later applied for and got into scripted. Is that everything, Kathy? Yeah. And we're very aware of people's job needs and caring needs. So we do our very, very best to make the sessions as accessible as possible.
Thanks, Simon. An anonymous attendee asks, I know we need to submit scripts that are our own IP, but if my script is a modern day urban fantasy inspired by the Arthurian legend, is that okay? Or is it a breach of the IP rule as it's inspired by work in the Creative Commons? Yeah. I think we get a lot of questions like this, and people want to have an updated Cinderella story or something based on real people. So I think this will apply to maybe a lot of people as well.
Yeah. What we say is that we want your work to be original, and we don't accept adaptations. There are some very kind of general mythological themes that come through that people have used as a skeleton for their script, and it feels like what you're suggesting would come under that particular cloak, and that is not a direct adaptation, and therefore that would qualify. However, I would suggest that you maybe have another look at your script, and even though you've used those Arthurian archetypes to structure your work, try and take it to another level. Try and unpack it even more, so that what you've got is actually something that's very much your own work.
Good. Sorry, thanks, Simon. So another question, and I think this could be for Simon and our writers. Do you have any advice for the final touches and elements you should be checking over before you submit? Hit that submit button and send your script in. Sia, do you have anything that you have a checklist or anything you go over?
Yeah, so obviously Simon had said that the 10 pages is really important, and it is, and I think a lot of people will spend a lot of time and focus on that beginning, and beginnings naturally are like, I mean, you're into the story, it's like full of energy, everything's happening, and then often a script might kind of like sputter a bit like at the end. So for me, it's important that every single aspect of that script like holds up and is as exciting or impactful or whatever as that beginning. So that's what I really do, and just to make sure that every scene is moving that story forward, and yeah, just trying to make something that's actually every element in its own way is good, and good even when it's like stands alone. So that's what I usually do.
Sometimes we get very panicky emails after the deadline because somebody spotted a typo in their script or something like that. Don't fret too much about that. I mean, obviously, when you're doing your final check, it's always great to proofread and to make sure that everything's in the right place. But no one I've ever worked with has read a script and said, well, the script's absolutely brilliant, but they don't know how to use the apostrophe, therefore we're not going to work with this writer. That just doesn't happen, okay? That said, do your best to make sure that it does work. Something I would ask you to check, make sure that your character names are consistent, because sometimes writers decide they want to call a character by a different name halfway through, and they forget to go through the earlier part of the script and change them. It happens more often than you'd think, and it can just be confusing. And the point about the main point about your script is it should be easy to read. So just make sure that it's easy to read, but please don't fret about a tiny typo or something like that.
Thanks, Simon. Another question is there a censorship guide to what people can write in their scripts?
No. I mean, we often get asked about this, in terms of language or taste and decency and all that sort of thing. We're dealing generally with adult drama scripts, and my advice on things like language and taste and so forth is it right for the character, or is it just gratuitous for shock? If it's just gratuitous for shock, then it's not a very good script. If it's genuinely coming from that character place, then you don't need to think about it.
Okay, here's an interesting question from Ruby. To my understanding, action direction writing should be as simple and spare as possible. So when you're looking for original, unique voices, are you meaning the context, story, character, and dialogue are all factors of script writing?
Yeah, I would say all of those. Your voice will show through all parts of your script writing, and what your script will be showing us is your POV of that particular world. So the points you make at the start are absolutely right, but at the same time, your voice will come through.
Great. So for Mark and Zia, someone is asking how many times you applied to Open Call. Were you just lucky?
I was just very lucky, very lucky. Doesn't usually happen like this.
Yeah.
It was the first time for each. So that's not normal. I know people that applied 6-7 times and then got on. So I was fortunate for that.
Same here, but I'd also say, because there's a similar story to talk about the Channel 4 screenwriting on here, but it's
fine.
There's like that other competition, and that I think I applied to like 5 times, like when I was younger and didn't get in, and then with BBC Scripted, I've got in like with the Open Call the first time applying as well. So I would also say don't take it like personally as well, because you don't know, there are some things that like that question about the making it to the long list, there's just external factors that it's nothing to do with you. It just is simply, it's either the readers or what the taste is at that time, so it's not reflective entirely on you. I'd say.
Yeah, I bumped into to a Scottish writer a couple of weeks ago, and she was reminding me that she'd actually applied 7 times, which has to be some sort of record, and eventually came through on the 7th occasion. So, sometimes people come straight in out of the box. Sometimes it takes a lot of persistence and resilience.
And there's a question linked to that as well, and a few people have asked, but they wanted to know from Mark and Zia, like, how much experience did you have writing? Obviously, you've just said, Zia, that you've applied quite a bit for the Channel 4. And Mark, like, I'm assuming it wasn't the first script you'd ever written that you sent into us.
It was actually. That's why that's why I'm such a fraud.
Okay. See ya. Moving quickly.
Go off. So sorry. The question was, like, how many times had I written?
Oh, how much experience had you, or how long had you been kind of, working towards being a writer at the time that you got?
For a really long time. Like, luckily, I kind of knew what I wanted to be from a really early age. So, like 17. But I got really used to applying to competitions and firstly, building that resilience and actually getting used to a lot of rejection, and secondly, using that rejection to turn it into actually positive momentum, or put my energy into, rather than despairing that, oh, I've been rejected from this competition, or I haven't got in, or especially when you get really close and then you just don't make it to the final mark. Use that as fuel to go into the next competition and the next draft and the next script, and that is actually really, I find rejection actually really useful for me. I love it, not too much, but yeah, it's useful when returning to that script and just having that energy to go back into it.
Great. Simon, there's another question. Are you going to say something?
I think if we take one more question, and then I think I've got a bit of housekeeping and we'll have to wrap up. So if we have one more question.
There's a very quick one. What is a log line? Can you explain a log line, please?
So the way I always say to people about log line is, your log line is a very, very short sentence that tells us what your script is. And how I would think about it is, if you were looking at a listings magazine like the Radio Times or something, and it goes down the schedule, 9 o'clock, some drama or other, and it'll say a story about a woman whose life falls apart after she's conquered Everest. Say, that doesn't sound like a very good show, but anyway, that's essentially a log line. So it's just something that just encapsulates what your script is.
Okay, there are other questions there, but I think we're running out.
I think we're going to have to wrap up. Audience, just a few things to say. First of all, thank you very much for coming. We do have some drop-in sessions during the open window. And this is a chance, if you want to pop in and kind of ask us anything about the process, or something that you've bumped into, or something you're worried about, you can drop in, and as I say, we will be able to take questions. You will find them and all the information about them on our website, but they're Tuesday the 11th November between 12:30 and 1, and that also will have BSL interpretation. And we have one on Thursday, the 27th November, from 5 to 5:30. Okay. Let's take one more question, Kathy.
Oh, I've just closed the box. I've just closed my questions box.
Let's ask this one, actually. Question for the panel. What advice would you give to someone new in the industry? What's the best way to get exposure to your work? Zia.
The competitions are really, really great. I think back when I first started, and just applying to those competitions. And every time you might think, as I said, like I got rejected so many times, but really was actually taking steps forward, introducing my work, introducing it to readers, producers, various different people. So the competitions are great, and BBC Writers Room obviously is really useful tool for that. And then you can look at Channel 4 and all of these other schemes. But yeah, apply to that, join all the groups as well. I mean, every region has got one. I saw on BBC Opportunities there was like a Edinburgh group, and when I was in Wales there was a Cardiff group. All of these, use them, get to know people, and just keep on sharing your work, because it's only through sharing your work do you actually get to learn and progress as a writer.
Yeah. Mark?
The same, plus social media. So I got through with Twitter, and I know there's different Twitter writers groups, and just surround yourself with other writers. That's the best way you'll learn about opportunities, and you'll get introductions, and you'll keep writing.
Keep writing. Great advice. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, audience. Thank you so much. We have to finish it there, and good luck with your scripts. Have a lovely afternoon.